moving at a snail pace to get things done just intensifies all my my feelings of kind of stress. And so I've been doing some specific things to counteract that. So I've been going to the gym more often because I just need to expend some of that energy first thing in the morning and get my head straight. But then there's always something that kind of, when I think I've got my head straight and I know that what I need to do for the day, something will happen personally or professionally that just knocks you a little bit more off course. And so I'm finding that in the day, I'm having to try and find a moment to center myself and go, yes, it's really, really important, but actually, this isn't the most important thing in your life. Your 19-year-olds creating all sorts of other havoc over here, there, and everywhere. And so I'm finding moments of trying to center myself when everything around me just feels like there are so many moving parts, but also my aspirations aren't being met, which, as I said, I find quite stressful.
Thank you for sharing. And that makes me think about how can we create or schedule buffer zones in our diary whenever we can and have that protected time, which is can be quite difficult, but actually might be one of the boundaries that we implement is having those buffer zones so we can take that time, and it might be time that we take for ourselves or actually time that we, if we have the energy, can give back to other people as well.
It's
And
actually great. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Thank you. I was just saying, Natasha made a great point about centering yourself, and the fact that you made time to do that, as Lucile says, is half the battle, I imagine. But Lucile, is there other ways that you think we should use to center ourselves in the way that Natasha was saying? So not only sort of making the time, but is there other techniques or exercises that, sorry if I'm preempting you here, that would help with that can just give you a bit more perspective, that word from earlier?
Yeah, and it really depends on on who you are and what your needs are, and that goes back to that self-knowledge. And for some people, it will be listening to some music. Some people, it will be movement, and movement might be stretching, but it might be dancing. It might be going for a run, going for a walk. And but movement can be also what stretches, and can you make sure that you're physically move. Or physically get out of another environment. And then again, going back to that wheel, some centering practice might be maybe I need to connect to my faith, for example. Maybe I need to journal. Maybe I need to do meditation. And meditation can look like sitting in silence, or it can be listening to affirmations. So in terms of finding centering practices, going back to that wheel of wellness can be a really great way to look at what do I need at that moment, where might I feel a bit low, and what will be the right practice at that time. Emma recommended How We Feel as an app. I've never heard of it, but that sounds great. Would you mind sharing a bit more about that? Because that sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we've done a lot of emotional intelligence at WWF to try and get people into a better state. And I was introduced to a thing called the mood meter, which was developed by the Centre for Emotional Intelligence at Yale. And it basically talks about emotions on a scale of pleasant to unpleasant and low energy to high energy. And most people are really crap about talking about their emotions. You sort of say, I'm happy, I'm sad, but it's increasing that vocabulary and getting the nuances. And the app itself, it's really easy to check in, and you literally you click on one of four colors as to whether or not you're feeling low energy, high energy, or pleasant or unpleasant. And it opens out a massive grid of words that you can look and reflect, and then choose those, and then maybe say why that why you're feeling that way. I've been using it now for a few weeks, and it's really interesting to kind of track. I can definitely see that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not in such a great place. Thursday, Friday, I think I start getting better, and then into the weekend. But you can also track against your sleep, against how your step count, against exercise. So it's been a really interesting one to play with.
That sounds great. And also how powerful it is that you can start to spot trends, and realize that maybe the trends are by the different days of the week. And it might be, is it the day of the week, or is it the task that you have to do on day of the week? How does it correlates with days where you have to commute into the office?
That was really useful, Emma. Thank you. There's some really interesting points in the chat as well, Lucile, as I'm sure you've seen. And I'm people saying could be some techniques for teenage children there as well. I'd like to draw in Tammy, but Tammy, you were saying your audio is not working because you've struck a chord with people. But feel free to come in if you can. But if you can't, then no, fair enough. Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can try that. No.
Oh, she's trying to talk. Tammy, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I think. Oh, hello. Yeah, no, she can't get the audio to. Thank you for trying, Tammy.
No.
The message couldn't get. Thank you anyway for trying. But clearly, what you were saying is resonating with people, Tammy. Is what I was going to say. Really, is that sort of yeah, the lack of tangible feeling like you're not making a tangible difference. I think is what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah.
Just conscious of time, so I really want to make sure that we talk about some practical tips and tools that we can introduce. So we talked about some models. The beauty with the models, whichever way you end up choosing, is that it creates a common language, and it means that people can refer to, and whether it's the app, whether it's colors, whether it's ranking systems. When you have that common way of talking about things, then once you talk about it, it becomes real, and you can do some things. And in terms of practicalities, to create an environment where people feel safe to talk about what they're feeling, but also talk about having the difficult conversations, is the concept of psychological safety, which really we could spend 2 hours on, but very briefly, psychological safety is made up of 4 elements. Inclusion safety, so it's our need to belong, it's our need to feel included. We need to feel accepted within a team, within the in-group as opposed to the out-group, so that we can be heard. So that's being comfortable, being present. The second stage is the learner safety. So are we able to ask questions? What are we having opportunities to learn in ways that might not be going on a 3 days training course? It might be shadowing, it might be asking questions, but it might be giving and receiving feedback. Third stage is contributor safety. So how can we participate as a member of a team? Are there opportunities for everyone's voice to be heard, but also not heard, to be listened to, but also heard? And also the ability to have lesson learns as well. So that reflection. And then the fourth stage is challenger safety. So how safe is it for people in the team to disagree, to challenge the status quo? Are people being able to contribute or challenge without the fear of being mocked or not listened to or excluded? So psychological safety, doing some psychological safety training with your leaders, team managers, people managers, is a really great way to help them practically put tools in place to make sure that the teams, going back to the cognitive capacity, have access to their cognitive capacities. I'm just looking briefly at the chat, and I love that people are recommending poetry as well, poetry, painting, anything that's artistic. The next stage, someone talked about the signs of recognizing poor well-being in self and in others. And for the self is, when am I not feeling like myself? Could be fatigue, low energy, finding it difficult to concentrate, to make decision. It might be the change, the pace of work. Is it going too fast or is it going too slow? Do I have too much to do, or do I not have enough to do? Lack of enthusiasm. So any change from that sense of how do I feel when I'm at my best? but also spotting signs in others. It can be withdrawals from activities, a decline of the quality of work and participation, expressing feelings, but also with spotting signs in others. If you approach someone and saying, I've noticed that you haven't been participating, or I've noticed a decline in the quality of your work or in the quality of your interventions, how safe will they be to actually tell you what has been going on and what might be the reasons of what's happened. So with each challenge will be different strategies, and for some of them it might be setting boundaries, it might be creating that buffer times for reflection and processing, creating a support network, but also relying on that support network. And what's been really beautiful about the chat is how supportive everyone has been, and the quality of the shares, the advice and the support. Celebrating the wins, again, I don't think we do that enough. And something that I've seen, especially with people teams, is we're very good at celebrating others, but when do we get the chance to celebrate ourselves? And really thinking about the importance of consistency and small sustainable change. One of my issues when I was going through my own mental health crisis was the sense of overwhelmed in feeling that I had to change everything all in one go, when actually focusing on one small step in a day. And, if I went out on a walk, that was a success. And that was something that actually, it was enough. So being comfortable with saying one action that supports my well-being in a day is enough. So in terms of, I had, quite a lot around boundaries, and a concept that I really like for boundaries is the concept of flexible boundaries, which you might want to do, and it's using a traffic light system. So red are your deal breakers, yellow as your nice to have, and green are the ones that you're flexible. So if you think about, for example, staying past your contracted hours, it might be that I will not stay, work past 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Under no circumstances. This is my deal breaker. A yellow boundary on that might be I'm more flexible to work past my contracted hours, but only twice a week, or only if I know that I don't have to pick up the children, or if I know that I can start a bit later the next morning. And with the green boundaries, you don't have any issues. That's not something that you feel strongly about either way. So when starting playing around with boundaries, looking at that flexible element, and really identifying what are your deal breakers and what are your nice to have, I found that quite helpful. So now with your personal toolkits, I really like, as I mentioned, the idea of having 2 exercises. So one is what can you do when you have 2 minutes? What can you do when you have 5 minutes? And what can you do when you have half an hour? Being quite realistic. And we talked about checking in with the app that I think Emma mentioned. That might be done in 1 minute. A breathing exercise might be done in 1 minute. If your poetry might be read in 5 minutes. Stretching might be done in 5 minutes as well. A walk, it can be 15 minutes. So I'd really encourage you to be able to look at, what can you do in giving yourself that toolkit of, I know that today is a really stressful day, but knowing that I will take 5 minutes away to breathe and reset will be quite helpful, will be able to put me back in full charge, making sure that I'm not being driven by my limbic system, that I can have full control over my emotional and mental and cognitive capacities. And That's why I'm so keen. That's why I'm insisting on, if I only have 2 minutes, it's still worth doing, and having that toolkit that you can feedback on. And I wish we had more time to really dive deeper into that. But also the second part of the exercise is looking at how often will you be checking in. What would be your daily practices, your weekly rituals, and your monthly check-ins. So, daily practices, again, it might be, in the app, how did I feel today? Is it a smile day? Was it a frown day? Was it green day or red day? Meditations, it can be journaling, it could be habit tracking. With the weekly rituals might be making sure that you connect with loved ones, or you have an opportunity to do something creative. And with the monthly check-ins, or it can be on a quarterly basis, is how am I tracking, going back to the wheel of wellness, on something that I knew that I scored quite low on, that I really want to invest time in to feel better about it. And focusing on boundaries and being quite clear about where might you benefit from setting boundaries. And sometimes setting boundaries might be setting boundaries with yourself, not with other people's. And boundaries with yourself might be, this is what I will no longer tolerate. And boundaries with people might be emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, how often people might have access to you, and being able to say no. So I just wanted to end and give us some time for question and shares as well, but also make sure that we finish by 12. Oops.
Thanks, Lucile.
So I just wanted to a quick image that I found is always quite helpful for me. What we think showing up daily is showing up consistently 100%, but actually really accepting that there will be days where we have more capacity than others, and as long as we show up regardless of our level of commitment, we still are showing up. So that's what I wanted to end on. And I know it was a super quick overview, but hopefully gave us enough time for sharing and also really supporting one another.
Which this network is always really good at doing. So
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much, network members. And thank you so much, Lucile. Questions, as she says, points, also things that will work for you. Love to hear from either in the chat in the last 5 minutes, or just come in. No need to raise hands. I'm rather taken by your summary, Lucile, that the idea is, as I heard it, consciously and actively making time to check in with yourself, working out what the ritual is, the 2 minutes, the 1 minute, the 5 minutes, the 30 minutes, really making time for that. And also this idea of flexible boundaries. And I love the way you said, and also boundaries with yourself as well. That was a nice point to make. I like that a lot. Perhaps the one that we forget most of all, possibly. What are people's thoughts? Things that have worked for you, things that you'd like to see more of, or think that you might need to do better as well, more of, perhaps, as I say?
It's not always respected, but I always block an hour in my diary in the middle of the day, and I try to block the first half an hour of the day. So because I know for me, to be able to kind of give my full self to everyone else, I need to try and feel as organized as I can be. So if I try and hang on to that kind of 9 till 9:30, or if I don't have it, I'll start a bit earlier. If I make sure I've got at least 15 minutes at the beginning of the day to kind of get my head on straight, that sets me up for a productive day. I know I've found days where I haven't been able to do that, and you've got lots of sort of conflicting priorities. And I think, to the point in the chat earlier today, a lot of what we do as HR business partners doesn't necessarily get recognized, because people just see it as a kind of BAU type activity, and actually we're putting a lot of effort into it. If we're not sort of feeling fully secure in ourselves, it's much harder to go out and keep doing that for the business. So I feel like holding on to time for yourself where you can, and that we all have days where you don't get that lunch break, and I know I definitely find it gets to kind of 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon and you think, why am I feeling awful? It's like, oh, because I haven't actually got up. I need to go eat something. I need to move.
Great point, Alice, especially about the BP role as well, and HR roles generally, I think. That's a lovely point too about the just making time actively and consciously that hour. I don't know if organisations are still doing it, but immediately post-COVID, when everyone was going on Teams calls constantly, I know some organisations did meeting-free Wednesdays, or they had a meeting-free hour and things like that, which seemed to work well. I don't know if that pertained, I don't know if that sort of kept going, as it were, or because you're saying it's almost like you have to do it for yourself. And you are doing it for yourself. No bad thing, but it's I wonder if organisations are still actively encouraging that. Possibly not sure.
If I can just
sorry.
Just very briefly, at least what you said, I thought was really interesting, because something that we need to practice a lot more is asking for what we need.
Fair point. And sorry.
No, I was going to say it's landed in different departments differently, but we have a wellbeing hour that is circulated to everyone's diaries, and they can move it around and use it where they want to. It's one of those things that we've sort of put in place. Some people get really annoyed with it because they get annoyed that people have time to take an hour for their well-being, and other people, it's absolute gold dust and they use it all the time. So it's quite an interesting one to have done. I was just going to say, I'm really taken by that. What matters is showing up daily and the difference of energy levels, because I think particularly as a leader, and I've been balancing this of, when strength versus vulnerability, and actually being vulnerable is being a strong leader, but sometimes in the past it's kind of like, come on, let's get on with this. And I think that's a really interesting balance, and that graphics really got it for me, because it's just sort of like, yes, you can be strong, but actually some days you just have to be really vulnerable and say, that's where I'm at, and go with it. But it's an interesting balance, and I love that. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Well, listen, I think we're just about up to time now. Thank you so much for spending the time taking us through these concepts and some of the ideas that you've shared. Really helpful images. Thank you for sharing those too. Network members, thank you for sharing so well as ever. Really appreciate all the mutual support and the points in the chat. We'll see you again soon. There's another one of these next week. For now, Lucile, thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lucile. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Lucile. Bye.
Lucile, stay on for a minute or two if you think there's some nice feedback here. Thank you ever so much for doing that.
Yeah, I feel like, we could have easily done an hour and a half or 3 hours.
We could, yeah.
It's quite hard to, go through everything and just feel like everyone has a chance. But yeah, hopefully it didn't feel like too surface level in terms of bombarding everyone with information. So that's that's what I'm hoping for.
No, you definitely weren't bombarding at all. No, definitely not. No, thanks, Lucile. I mean, I think the two things that personally I got out of it in terms of how it was done, if you will, is that there's the ideas and the images that you shared clearly resonated, firstly, and secondly, the tone you set is very anti-bombarding, which is great. So that you're setting up that tone so that people feel that they can share and come back with things, which is what they did. They're great, the network members, and they're really good at sharing, I have to say.
Yeah, so supportive. I mean, it's really rare to find a space where you can talk about, well, this is what's working, but